India. Densely populated and colourful, poor and chaotic. Yet the gardens here bear witness to wealth and order. How was it possible in India to achieve a marriage between oriental magnificence and the rigour of Islamic garden culture? We set out on a voyage of discovery to the most spectacularly beautiful gardens blooming in the midst of hustle-bustle and hullabaloo of modern India. Nearly a fifth of the world's population lives in India. This has made the government district in New Delhi an important point on the political map of the world. The President of India lives and governs behind this gate, and does so in a garden. Seen from above, this site looks much like the pattern of a carpet, crossed by austerely geometric axes and water channels. It is quite clearly a garden, designed to Islamic principles. How can it be that the head of state in a country consisting largely of Hindus lives surrounded by an Islamic garden? It was created over a century ago when the British moved the seat of government from Calcutta to Delhi in northern India. They built a new city for the purpose, New Delhi, with its own seat of government, complete with a garden. In doing this, the British colonial rulers oriented themselves on the gardens they had come to know here, combining these ideas with their own love of sumptuous flower beds. India extends through several climatic zones, from the foothills of the Himalayas to the subtropics in the south. The variety of all the different flowers found in these zones is found in the garden. They are representative of the entire country, which is ruled from here by the President. The Chief Gardener, Ram Kumar, has already worked for 7 presidents. He knows all the flowers of India much as if they were his own children.
मेरे को तो अपनी जगह पर सभी हैं गुलाब की जगह गुलाब है जी
There are roses in place of
एस्टेटिक
roses.
लिली
There are lilies in
हर
place
एक
of lilies. It's
जब
like
एक
paternal love.
आदमी के बच्चे हो
Just as
जाएंगे
one
सब
cannot choose a
अलग-अलग
favourite
मोहमाया
amongst
का
their own
जाल फंस
children,
जाता है जी
whether they are
चाहे
good
वो
children
कैसा
or
भी है
bad.
अच्छा हो
I
या
also
बुरा हो
like all these
तो इसी
flowers,
तरीके से
everything in this
हमारा तो
garden.
ये काम है इसमें सारी चीजें पसंद हैं
In our quest to find out why Islamic garden culture plays a role in India, we must travel to Agra, a 2-hour car journey distant from Delhi. Almost the entire subcontinent was under the rule of the legendary Mughal Empire and its monarchs from the early 16th to the mid-19th century. These Islamic rulers had come from Central Asia and here created a state structure comparable to the absolutist regimes in Europe. Wherever they established themselves, they immortalized their presence in buildings and gardens. For example, in Agra, which was one of their most important cities. In the midst of this urban and traffic chaos, it is difficult to even imagine the former magnificence of Agra. This is why we meet the best-selling author and art historian, William Dalrymple. He has concerned himself intensively with the Mughals and their time in his research work.
Agra at its peak was one of the wonders of the world. Today, India, in the eyes of the West, is often associated with poverty, or certainly until recently was associated with poverty. But for Europeans of the 17th century, India was a magical land of riches and elegance and wealth.
We set off for the river Yamuna, having learned from William Dalrymple that its banks were once covered with the finest of gardens. One of these has survived, the Ram Bagh. Situated on a raised terrace, it was built for the Mughal Empress Nur Jahan in the early 17th century. Built is the correct term here, since the garden consists of raised paths, pavilions and terraces. Gardens are intrinsically perishable entities. It is great good luck here that there is so much architecture to hold it all together. Regrettably, we can no longer say what flowers the Mughals planted, but William Dalrymple has discovered the models that were used.
The Mughals came from Central Asia and brought with them the Persianate culture of Samarkand, Uzbekistan, Kabul. And there, the old Persian garden tradition had never been broken since the time of antiquity. It had gone straight into the Islamic world and continued without a break. And there were many different garden traditions in India also brought by earlier waves of invaders. But the Mughals, with their particular obsession with order, geometry, the marshalling of aesthetics into a very clear order, were not happy with the gardens in India. They weren't straight enough, the borders weren't at right angles, and to their eyes, the gardens of India were messy and sloppy and asymmetrical. So they didn't invent gardens in India. There were many there before them, but they did put a new sense of symmetry and order onto the existing system.
Gardens as a luxury only the rich can afford. In India, this is still the case today. The client is no longer a ruler, but a hotel. It is an old Mughal tradition that a garden must be a work of art for all the senses, including the ears. Deepan Singh is responsible for this garden.
The basic idea came from the waterfalls. The natural waterfalls will give the sounds, and here we create these things with the fish scales things in the stone, where the water comes and stuck and then again go. Then it create a sound, and it also give the natural look like a waterfall.
The elaborate garden is close to the most famous example of Mughal culture. One can see the shimmering white dome of the Taj Mahal rising above the garden treetops. We avoid using the main entrance, however, and approach from the river by what is today the rear side. And not only because this will save us from joining the long queue of tourists. We heard from William Dalrymple that the Mughals themselves approached from the river too, since this allowed them to enjoy the view, especially at night, from a garden.
One of the most attractive aspects of Mughal gardens is the Mehtab Bagh, the moonlight garden. Of course, in moonlight, what is important is not colour, which is important in the day gardens, it's smell, it's scent.
Who has not heard the story of the Taj Mahal, of the Mughal ruler who had this tomb erected for his wife as a symbol of his undying love? And the moonlit garden is still a favourite haunt of lovers today. According to tradition, it was a Mughal empress who first commanded the perfume of roses captured. We want to find out whether the tradition still exists. We set out on our way to the rose fields of Thor in northern India by the first light of dawn. We arrive just in time to experience how the petals are harvested, since this must be done before the morning sun has dried the dew. Spread before us is a sea of Damascene roses, which are cultivated because of their intensive perfume. The entire village lives from the roses, and the period when the roses bloom in spring is a time of both work and festivity. We accompany the pickers from the fields to the village, where the petals are weighed. The news has spread around quickly that we are here, and everyone is out and about. The small room fills with the perfume of rose petals, and we are in the midst of it all. Rose water is made from the petals in the nearby village of Siktara. In order to do this, water must first be heated over a fire. We saw earlier how cowpats were being collected everywhere and dried. These are used as fuel, and by this means, cow dung helps to produce perfume. The more rose petals that are put in, the higher the concentration of rose water. The old copper kettles are filled with water and then tightly closed. Strips of linen are dipped in a mixture of clay and water so that the kettles and their lids can be closed with an airtight seal. The principle of a pressure cooker is used here, with the difference that the escaping steam is captured and directed by a bamboo cane into this small kettle. The steam sinks down in the cold water. Roses continue to occupy our thoughts. For this reason, we are to visit an old gardener in Jaipur who has cultivated roses his whole life long. Like so many tourists, our curiosity is first drawn by the celebrated Palace of the Winds. We then visit the small house in the city park where Gaffer Khan lives, and our wish is to talk with him about his life as a gardener.
To my house, Delhi.
Gaffer Khan was born in 1920 and has spent his whole life as a gardener in the service of the Maharajas of Rajasthan. He followed the footsteps of his ancestors in this profession.
When I was finishing my education, I used to go with my father, Khan Sahib Munshi Ahmed Ali Khan. He was a wizard of gardening. He used to tell that my great-great-great-great-father was in garden department. Gardening is in our blood.
Gaffer Khan was responsible for all the palace gardens in Rajasthan. The Maharaja Man Singh was his mentor.
He took me to England for learning something about gardening. I stayed for there 2 years. I learned very much. I got the prizes from there too, in the Chelsea show.
When the Maharajas of India were deprived of their titles and privileges in 1970, Ghaffar Khan continued to care for and cultivate roses for the family.
When you sit before a rose and you will concentrate over there, you will find different images in the same rose. And you can imagine how you have to produce some new roses. You take one rose, go on looking towards it, and imagine that I can convert this rose into different kinds of roses. By grafting, by budding, by cutting.
Some of his roses still grace the Rambagh garden in Jaipur, for which Ghaffar Khan was responsible. It is still well cared for and beautiful, but many flowers have had to bow out for reasons of pragmatism.
When I entered, I saw many Mughal types of gardens. My father taught me that you have to design these Mughal gardens like that. But after some time, their highnesses asked me to convert some, to modernize those gardens, and I converted them. So nowadays, those designs are no more. They have got the lawns and very few beards and very little flowers. Only they depend on the lawns and the palaces and no more such gardens.
The luxuriant floral decoration in Mughal style has survived in the case of this garden, but only locked away in Ghaffar Khan's memory. Elsewhere, the gardener tells us, this blending of Islamic rigour with Indian magnificence still exists, and he directs us out into the country in a small village near Jaipur. We find the garden belonging to the Samod family. We find a garden in which the Mughal love for the play of water and geometry intermingle wonderfully with the Indian love of magnificent flowers. We become curious about the origins of this garden culture in India while gazing at the long water axes, the symmetry and the architecture here. We travel back north to Sikandra, close to the city of Agra. The tomb of the great Mughal Emperor Akbar is here, surrounded by a garden. Like all other rulers in this world, the Mughals were eager to present and project their magnificence beyond the realm of this life. This is why they chose to erect their opulent tombs surrounded by gardens. Akbar died in 1605. By that time, his court had already become a seat of philosophy and reason, as William Dalrymple explained to us.
If you compare the court of Akbar, where Sunni, Shia, Sufi, Vaishnav Hindu, Shaivite Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, Jewish, Goan, Jesuit, Portuguese are all invited to Agra to discuss what different religions have in common and where they differ. And Akbar, 2 centuries before Voltaire, is saying we must stand on the solid ground of reason, not the marshy land of tradition.
Some extraordinary information about an Islamic ruler of the 16th century. The Mughals came from Central Asia and brought with them the Persian influence to India. We ask William Dalrymple if our impression is correct, that beauty was a significant aspect of this reign.
Of all the rulers I've come across in East or West, none were so obsessed about the arts, about painting, jewellery, fashion, architecture, music. And it was a central part of their identity as rulers to take a direct, hands-on interest in every level of the aesthetics of life.
Not only in life, but also extending beyond it. On entering the tomb, I had the impression of making a closer approach to the person Akbar. He planned this structure himself, and it reflects the extravagant and endless abundance of creation. We come across these designs once again in a cloth printing workshop near Jaipur. Wooden stamps for the printing of textiles have existed for 2,500 years. This tradition is maintained in the workshop studio here. An extra printing process with each block, as the stamping tools are called in India, is required for every single colour. Raj Kanwar discovered her passion for hand-printed cloth at Design College. For her, Mughal patterns are simply an Indian cultural heritage, irrespective of any religious context.
When a product is made, a block maker may be a Muslim, a printer may be a Hindu, the dyer may be again a Muslim. So it is an intermingling of different cultures working on the same product together. And when that happens, then there is no differentiation in what they are doing separately. It's beyond religion. They all have to work together.
Raj Kanwar's collection includes hundreds of blocks, with floral and geometric designs, including original items dating from the Mughal period. Even in those times, working with a division of labour was already established.
A piece was not manufactured in one place. It often travelled. Somewhere it went for dyeing, somewhere it went for printing, somewhere it went for finishing. It went through various hands. So it is people's love in crafts that made some of the most beautiful pieces, because there's so many human hands working behind it. That is what builds bridges, and arts and crafts only flourishes when there is peace.
Wise words. Art and beauty can only flourish in times of peace. The will to beauty is taken to extremes with these valuable textiles. The designs have their roots in the Mughal period and its love of plants and gardens. The fashion designer Rohit Bal is enthusiastically focused on this epoch.
Everything about the Mughal dynasty has been very close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it. So that's why I did this collection, which is based on the Mughal gardens, and it's called Gul Bagh, which is basically literally means a flower garden. I grew up in these beautiful gardens, the beautiful fountains and the beautiful trees. It's a long-lasting and a very passionate love affair.
The joys of taking part in festive celebrations and wearing magnificent clothing still belong together in India. A robe such as this one demands an excellent posture. It weighs many kilos with its interwoven metal thread. Rohit Bal presents his exotic creations to us in his atelier. It is not only fashion in his view, but a declaration of belief and an approach to life.
It's a beautiful amalgamation of two art forms and coexistence of two different religions and two different philosophies, two different thoughts. Everything becomes more beautiful when there's an intercultural exchange of ideas.
The journey takes us far south, to Hyderabad. Hyderabad was an Islamic centre, and until the 18th century it was the only place on earth where diamonds were found. We think this wealth must surely have its opulent reflection in the gardens here. What we find is a gigantic garden construction site. The head of this, Ratish Nanda, has commissioned scientists to research this site, and this work has brought some astonishing results.
For 169 years, between the 16th and the 17th century, the Qutub Shahi rulers built several tombs in this area. But in addition to tombs, there are mosques, there are step wells, major large step wells, which indicate a lot of irrigation was happening here, and a lot of garden structures. I don't know of any other complex of this nature that has survived anywhere else in the world. So over 108-acre space, there are 72 structures.
An Islamic necropolis in the heart of southern India, on a 430,000 square metre site, all of it designed as gardens. Do we know today what these gardens once looked like?
We today know, for example, and for sure, that at least some of the major tombs were set within enclosure walls, quite like the Mughal gardens of Delhi.
Remnants of these walls have been discovered. The structures have now been rebuilt, true to the originals from the scientific findings. Buildings have also been restored, in which many ancient techniques can be used once more. The Aga Khan Trust for Culture is the initiator of this gigantic garden construction site. It also provides the training needed by the specialist craftspeople. In total, 800 people are employed over a period of many years on the site. The extreme climatic conditions here will soon bring the patina to the materials, ensuring that the glaring white will disappear, and bringing the domes once more into a harmonious union with the gardens.
The idea is to restore the garden layout in the immediate setting of the monuments, but also to restore the ecology. And by that I mean the slopes, the water drainage, the runoff going into the Baolis, but also planting forests of native trees, both on the northern and southern buffer of the site. This project is going to help significantly enhance the quality of life of both local inhabitants and citizens of Hyderabad as a whole.
What will this site look like in 5 years' time? We resolved to come back and see. On the next stage of our journey, we must not only travel almost 2,000 kilometers, but we must also cross a national border. Lahore is in Pakistan, and we decide to make the trip, because Lahore was once the capital of the Mughal Empire in all its magnificence. The structure crumbling to dust here was once the wall behind which could be found one of the most beautiful of all Mughal gardens. At the first light of day, people are already flocking here on hundreds of bicycles and mopeds. The name of this place, Shalimar, meaning the purest of all human joys. The magnificence of today is no longer of quite the same measure as the original glory, but for a great many people, this garden is a favourite location where they can at least enjoy the early hours of the day. Lahore is in one of the hottest regions of the world and regularly has temperatures of up to 45 degrees. From April to September, everyone tries whenever possible to avoid leaving the house. The pattern for this facility is a Persian Shahabag, a garden laid out with rigorous geometric axes. Lovers should find happiness on extensive terraces of marble beside numerous pools with fountains, surrounded by the perfume of flowers and songbirds from every part of the world. These are lines from a poem written in the 17th century. Today, however, the garden is on the red alert list of the most endangered World Cultural Heritage Sites, and the fading magnificence would surely make us melancholy were it not for the many people here who clearly take such great pleasure in their garden. Water once gurgled over the ingeniously ornamented surfaces. The flow of water, once the great wealth of the gardens, has today all but run dry. A slumbering Mughal garden that is waiting to be awakened once more. Years ago, Lahore was the superb capital of the Mughal Empire. In the Europe of those times, the city was a synonym for measureless wealth and unbounded power. The ruler Akbar turned Lahore into one of the great centres of Islamic culture. And today, for us in the West, Lahore has become a byword for political chaos and extremist activities. A search for art here would appear to be absurd. We travel to the Lahore University of Art in Lahore and quickly establish that being here is very much the same as it is at a University of the Arts anywhere else in the world. Young art students are individualists wherever they happen to be. We have come here because of an art form that has survived, which is not found anywhere else in the world: miniature painting. Its origin: Persian. The subject is taught by Imran Qureshi, an internationally well-known and very successful artist. He was also a student of this university.
There was this misconception about miniature painting at that time that there is no margin for creativity within this genre of miniature painting. You cannot express yourself as an independent artist through this medium. So I took it as a challenge at that time, and I decided to go to miniature painting.
Why are we interested? Miniature painting was brought to India by the Mughals, and its main subject: gardens.
I want to make them master of the technique first, and then we develop their conceptual side as well. So these two things are going together, parallel to each other. To learn something traditional, you don't need to be too much traditional. In fact, they are doing something very traditional thing, but at the end result is very contemporary, and they started looking at things in a very different way. If I'm giving something to them, I'm learning a lot from them as well. Every day there are some accident in the class, the students are coming to me, they are showing me, and we are resolving it together at their artwork. And I'm also learning during that process of resolving those issues.
To his students, Imran Qureshi embodies and unites two worlds of art: the traditional Persian and his own very independent contemporary one.
My work is always reflecting whatever is happening around me, whatever is happening in my surrounding. I cannot just ignore it and doing something which is about some Mughal court painting, Mughal court scene. I'm just painting it. I think, why should I do it? What they were doing, it was the depiction of their time. What we are doing, this is our responsibility to, as an artist, to reflect what is happening in our surrounding, whether on very personal level or emotional level, or whether on a wider scale, or the pollution, the global warming, the violence, the beauty, everything.
The fascination of his creative achievement is the energy of the spilled work, in combination with the delicacy of his miniature painting.
Doing lots of abstract mark making, and then I'm drawing something very carefully, very delicate foliage at the top of it. At the top of a very violent kind of splash. Then I filled everything with very delicate foliage or leaves or petals and rendered them. So I think these two opposite things, for me, they are like life or destruction of life, or violence or beauty. So yeah, I'm working with that idea.
His work can be found in all the leading galleries of the world, such as the Museum of Modern Art in New York. We return to India, Old Delhi to be precise. This is a place where things are stored and bought, delivered and sold. We are looking for the shop which sells the rosewater we saw being produced. The Gulab Singh perfume shop is an island of delightful fragrances. Above all, the scent of roses beguiles the visitor with its overwhelming presence on entering the sales room. All the fragrant oils and waters here are developed and produced by the family. Praful Gundi relates the history of the company.
This shop was established in 1816, so it's about 199 years old. We are the 7th generation in this business. The rose flower, which is cultivated in Uttar Pradesh, was initially brought from Central Asia by the Mughals, and it is called Rosa Damascena.
The family also produces essences, which are used by leading manufacturers as the basis for their perfumes. Experiments are also conducted. For example, what is the smell of the soil on the first day of the monsoon rains? To our nostrils, most stimulating. All perfumes are concentrated memories of natural experiences. With the perfume of roses still in our noses, we make our way to New Delhi and to a tomb garden. Humayun's tomb is the first garden the Mughals created in India. It is the predecessor of the so celebrated Taj Mahal, and the architect was from Persia. The once ruinous building and overgrown gardens have been restored to create a green oasis for the inhabitants of this megacity. The project manager is Ratish Nanda, whom we have already met in Hyderabad, and he tells us the history of the gardens.
This garden's been through a lot. It's changed dramatically. It went into decline soon after it was built. It was used for agriculture for about 200, 300 years. Then it became important to the British visitors. A lot of the layout was changed to make it an English landscape garden. Then Lord Curzon, the Viceroy in the early 20th century, restored the Mughal layout. So in this case, it was very necessary for us to understand the various layers and then go back to something that would be of universal value and significant to the site.
Traditional tomb gardens have their origins in Persian models and are divided into geometric quarters by paths and water channels. The use of machinery is not permitted on the World Cultural Heritage Site. All the water channels here need to be rebuilt, and some building parts have also been completely renewed by stonemasons. The water channels were flooded for the irrigation of the gardens, and the overflow ran into areas with sunken surfaces. The raised paths above these provided a dry route through the garden. The gardens around Humayun's tomb are among the most important tourist attractions of the Indian capital city today. Many of these visitors are Indian tourists, but the city dwellers also benefit indirectly from the gardens. As green lungs, they help to improve the air quality of this megacity. The Sundar nursery is directly adjacent to Humayun's tomb and its gardens. This is where the British maintained a kind of tree nursery for the replanting of New Delhi 100 years ago. A new city park is in the process of being established here at present, in the vicinity of other tomb structures. The landscape architect Mohammed Shahir created a garden reminding of the structures of traditional gardens.
As you know, this garden is a small part of the general development of the nursery as a park and as a heritage place. And we thought that this would be a special garden inspired from the idea of what are known as garden carpets, which are very famous in Persian tradition, and they go back thousands of years. The tradition of depicting gardens as a part of carpet patterns.
We ask Mohammed Shahir for the different types of Mughal gardens.
So you can think of funerary gardens, palace gardens, gardens in the hills which are linear and take advantage of the natural scenery. They look out onto the lake. and gardens on the plains, which again are on the banks of the river, and we look out onto again natural scenery. So there is also this important aspect of the Mughal garden, that while it is self-contained, there is always a prospect that it connects with the regional landscape. This is a very important part of it. And that has some philosophical consequences, because it tells you that this is life, but there is something beyond as well.
The spiritual aspect is important in all Islamic gardens. We asked ourselves why so many people chose this precise spot as their eternal resting place. We are curious about this place when we hear the reason. Crowds of people are moving towards a single point, and we follow them. They are visiting the shrine of Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya, who is revered as a Sufi saint. He preached love, pluralism and tolerance, doing so in the early 14th century. Most of the people who make the pilgrimage here are Muslims, but many followers of other religions come too. We learn that a dense accumulation of tombs has gathered around the shrine over the centuries. The closer one approached this holy Sufi and his tomb, the greater the blessing. The Basti, the district in which the shrine lies, is the home of the Muslim minority in Delhi. The Basti. There are innumerable children here. A private place of retreat is a rare luxury. But it certainly exists. A garden for women only in a male-dominated world. The women call it the Veil Garden because they can remove their veils here if they wish to. Three by 3 meters is the average size of a room in which 6 people live, Jyotsna Lyle says. She is a social worker who is available for the women of the quarter.
In 2008, when we asked how many people had access to any green space, the answer was 0%. In 2013, when we asked the same question, 95% of the people said that they could access a green space. It's important because the Basti is extremely cramped and these parks are the only green lungs in the area. The density of the Basti is 70,000 people per square kilometer. So to have these green spaces where the people can come out and walk and get a bit of fresh air is really important and impacts the quality of their lives.
Afroz Jamala confirms these figures. She often comes here for exercise and to enjoy some amusing hours with the other women.
तब हमें बहुत परेशानी थी जब ये पार्क नहीं था, लेकिन पहले हमारे एरिया में काली मस्जिद एरिया में छतरी पार्क था, तो हम कभी कभार जाते थे, लेकिन वहाँ मर्द भी आते थे, तो सिर्फ हम हल्के हल्के आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बुर्के में वॉक करके आ जाते थे। सुबह सुबह जाते थे फजर की नमाज पढ़ के, जैसे कोई नहीं है, कोई मर्द वहाँ पर नहीं है, आदमी लोग नहीं है कोई, तो तब हम बुर्का ओढ़ के पूरा नकाब लगा के फिर हम वॉक करके आ जाते थे।
It's also a place where women, when they visit their mothers and they want to have a private conversation, they come with their friends or their sisters or their mothers. It's a space which is really their own, just to be what they want to be.
European, I have learned here that the magnificent is not what always counts, and having a share in paradise can simply mean having a green where you can move around freely and laugh. This is the beautiful way gardens can have of making people happy.